Yeah, it's crazy. People think like fruit magically makes you fatter. And so first of all, in the scientific literature, that's just false. And second of all, there's like some kind of weird bodybuilding lore in which they say like, damn, fructose, you won't be able to lose fat. Like I've gotten my leanest eating like tons of fruit every single day.
So you might be eating 3,000 calories a day and you decide, I'm going to burn 500 calories. So you burn 500. And so you think you're in a 500 calorie deficit, but you're not really, because you're going to burn 250 calories fewer because you're just tired and you're not doing the steps and you're just kind of run down the rest of the day. Yep. Do you think that's true? Is it 50%? Yeah. Is that about a good guess?
It really depends on the individual and the circumstance. It also depends on where you start. If you start from a really low level of activity, you can add 500 and it just adds 500. If you're already training that whole, like the Herman Ponzer sort of the energy constraint hypothesis is, if you get into burning 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 calories a day, adding 1,000 calories from there just bumps into that same ceiling over and over, and your body will compensate in other ways. So if you're already doing a fuckload of activity, you don't need to add any cardio or much. It wouldn't work anyway. What you have to do then is just control your eating. And notice I said control, not like reduce. So if you're doing 4,000 or 5,000 calories of activity total, cardio plus weights plus everything, just being alive, if it's 5,000 calories that you're putting out per day, all you have to do is eat like 3,500 calories or 4,000, which is fucking still a shitload of food. You will lose weight like crazy. But if you're only doing 2,000 calories of activity per day, then cutting to 1,500 sucks.
Yeah, it sucks.
Hungry, it blows. So why don't you go to 2,500 or 3,000? Easy to maintain, almost no problem. Keep your calories at 2,000, and you won't have to cut any food, and you'll just lose a bunch. So if you're very inactive, adding weights and cardio and meat is a really good idea. If you're already very active, at some point you're going to have to just pull back on the food a little bit. The key to fat loss is to make sure, like you said earlier, calorie burn is higher than intake. If you're already burning a shitload of calories, just make your intake normal. You lose a bunch of fat. If you're already burning very few calories, don't drop your intake like crazy. Burn a bit more calories, leave your intake where it is, or just reduce it a tiny bit. That deficit opens up, and then you lose a bunch of fat.
One thing I noticed, which is probably controversial, in that I could say that your metabolism doesn't really matter as much as you think. And the argument I make is, you take this. If I'm a 6'6" man and I can eat 5,000 calories a day, maintain 10%, I'm 6'6", fast metabolism, 5,000 calories. If I'm eating 4,000 calories a day and I'm in 1,000 calorie deficit, probably going to end up feeling like shit. I'm not eating enough to sustain that 10%, versus someone with a slow metabolism, 100-pound female. She's eating 1,500 calories a day, and then she eats 1,400. She's only in a 100-calorie deficit. She's eating 1,400. The guy is eating 4,000. I would argue that the 4,000 calorie diet, that guy's suffering more than the 1,400 calorie dieter, despite the fact that his metabolism is way faster than the person who's eating 1,400 calories. What do you say to that?
It's 100% true. One, it's all relative. Your hunger signaling is your own hunger signaling. Your metabolism is your own metabolism. If you generate a deficit relative to what you're used to, you will experience downsides scaled exactly to relative what you're used to. So if your maintenance is 5,000 calories, you can be on 3,500 calories a day and fucking starving to death trying to eat your own arm. If your maintenance is 2,000 calories, 3,500 calories may be like you can't physically stuff enough food in your mouth to make that a reality. So a lot of times people say like, there's no reason that a bikini competitor should be eating less than 1,000 calories a week, or sorry, a day.
Yeah.
Like that's starvation. It's like, maybe some folks with different genetics, different body size, they could run a 900 calorie diet for weeks on end and just be a little bit hungry. Whereas other people, like when I was getting ready for my last show, I was eating like 2,750 calories per day, and I was fucking hungry and it dreams about food every night. 2,750, well, that's with 10,000 to 12,000 steps every day. That's with 9 weight training sessions and 3 Brazilian jiu-jitsu sessions a week.
And with enough muscle mass that you're burning a lot of calories just sitting there.
230, totally.
Yeah.
So it's all relative. And this is one of the reasons, a quick rant, a lot of times I'm sure you get asked these questions too, like on my Instagram and YouTube, people ask like, hey, Like, how many calories do you eat per day? And I just almost want to be like, it doesn't fucking matter how many I eat per day. You're not me. You may need less or more. So find out what you're eating. And if you want to gain muscle, generate a slight surplus. If you want to lose fat, generate a slight deficit. And there you go. I think people just, it's almost like porn. It's like, ooh, I wonder how many calories Jay Cutler eats. It's like, well, you're not Jay Cutler.
And just because that number's high, like I'm telling you, when I'm eating 3,500 a day right now and people are like, oh, I wish I could eat that, it doesn't mean that I'm more full than you. Like, trust me, if I go to 2,500, that sucks ass. Like, I would feel like shit. I go high. I just have no energy at that level. Somebody else, they're eating 2,200 and saying, oh, I wish I could eat 3,500. Meanwhile, they're 2,200. That's a surplus. They're bulking. I'm like, what are you talking about? You're force feeding at that level if they're a 110-pound female. So you can't just go by what is the amount of calories you're eating, because all too often you see these coaches and they're eating this much and they're bragging they're eating this much calories. It's like that only matters in relation to, is it a surplus or a deficit to you?
Yeah. And there's another sort of darker side where prep coaches will be like, yeah, I got this client, he's eating 4,500 calories and he's losing fat. He's got striated glutes. Come be, my client. It's like, first of all, that client has pretty fucking baller genetics. Second of all, how much T3 is that motherfucker on? If I took 150 micrograms T3 a day, I could eat fuck all and also get lean, and then my heart would fucking blow up and you'd find me dead on the kitchen floor. How much tren is he on? Like
DNP, everything.
Yeah.
Like
it's like literally like porn. People are like, oh my God, 4,500. That would be so amazing. Well, like, yeah, if you were on that much T3, you'd just be like this all the time. You'd be like, nothing's amazing. Get me the fuck out of here. And that's the reality. So just looking at raw calorie numbers, don't be impressed by that shit. It's got to be what's contextually good for you. You have a good coach. He's going to assign you the number of calories that works to get you lean or to get you jacked with a few side effects. And that number could look real different for you.
Here's a good one. Is eating too much fat unhealthy? Like, just inherently, like if you're eating a lot of fat, is that unhealthy? Or is it actually the calories, or if you're in a calorie surplus, that's unhealthy?
Yeah, great question. I would say that 90% of the answer is calories, and in some more rare cases, 10% of the answer is excessive amounts of fats. There are certain kinds of fats, particularly certain types of saturated fats, that if you eat in excess, even if your calories are decent, you can get into some not ideal health states. But the real nasty price to your health is a caloric excess. So for example, if you eat a normal amount of fats, but you're eating way too many sugars, some people say, oh, it's the sugars that are bad. Well, if you have an endurance athlete who trains a lot and they're calorically neutral, 60% of their carbs come from sugars consumed during and after the ride. And they're some of the healthiest people in the world. So fats aren't really, outside of extreme circumstances, fats are not bad for your health. Proteins aren't bad for your health. Sugars are not bad for your health. It's chronically low levels of activity paired with a caloric surplus, getting ultra fat. That is bad for your health. And it doesn't really matter how you get there, what kind of nutrients you add in order to gain fat. If you get too fat for too long and you're not in a physically active state, then you pay the price. So if someone's eating a really high fat diet, but it's mostly healthy fats like poly and monounsaturated fats, especially, and even if it's lots of saturated fats, if they're relatively lean, if they're very active, they're probably going to be in really good health. If you eat way too many fats or carbs or proteins, and that leads you to get pretty fat and your level of activity is low, you're going to be paying the price.
Yeah, you literally answered my next question, which would be, is it too many carbs and sugar? Because I'd made a defense before. I said, sugar isn't inherently bad. It depends on what you're doing. If I just did a 3-hour bike ride and I have 2 hours to go and you show me some lettuce or some sugar, give me the licorice. It's healthier for me than that salad. So it depends on your physical activity. And for me, it's all about calories. And so that's why I've actually made videos in the past on macros don't matter. And it's not that people get pedantic and say, well, you need protein. Yeah, you have protein, but if you eat higher carbs, then it's going to have a protein sparing effect, have higher fats, protein sparing effect. So whether you're eating higher carbs and less fat or higher fat and less carbs, assuming you're eating enough protein, it doesn't really matter. That's why I don't actually track macros. I track calories. I'm assuming you're going to eat enough protein. It just kind of goes without saying. I'll give a diet to a client. They're going to have enough protein. But if they want to have higher fats or less fats, more carbs, I don't really think it matters. What matters is how many calories are you eating? And if you're in a surplus, you're gaining. And if you're in a deficit, you're losing. Because there's these carbophobes out there. They're scared of carbs, or people say you can't have any carbs. I'm on a keto diet. And I'm like, just eat and eat in a deficit to lose weight.
Yeah, those carbophobes are funny. Like Dr. Spencer Nadolsky of RP, he's got these funny memes or like little Instagram posts where he's like, people say carbs make them fat. And you go, okay, so brown rice, whole grain pasta with veggies and fruits made you fat? And they're like, no. Like, so what made you fat? Like pizza, donuts, ice cream. Well, that's super palatable, super tasty junk food with tons of fat and carbs that you overeat. That's what makes you fat. Carbs don't make you fat. Fats don't make. Can you imagine? You're like, yeah, I'm going to get real fat. I'm going to eat a lot of almonds and pistachios to get really fat. And we're like, good luck. Like, how many fucking almonds can you eat until you're like, fuck this? They actually have at least one study where they fed people like almost as many almonds as they wanted, and the average person lost weight and fat. And
was it because in comparison to pizza or something that's more palatable, like ice cream? Like I'm not stopping 2 liters ice cream, it's gone. But nuts, maybe you only want a handful or two. So in comparison, you end up eating less.
100%. And so almonds are like really satiating after you eat a certain amount of calories and just unsalted, unflavored almonds. You're just not hungry for a long time. And also, there's just not that tasty. So you're just not going to eat a whole lot of them. So that really shits out the idea that fats make you fat. Nobody's getting fucking fat here eating fresh fruits and brown rice. I think that's ever fucking happened. And then so it's clearly not the carbs. It's funny because people say carbs make you fat. And then you see like endurance cyclists that eat like 600 grams of carbs a day and they have like 5% fat. And it's like, so what happened to them? Like, well, and you get all these bullshit excuses. And then you say like, okay, what about bodybuilders? If it fits your macros, they eat pizza and ice cream every day and they have extra protein along with it, and they're able to control their calories. They don't get fat either. So then what's the real thing? It's fucking calories. It's calories. If you eat a caloric excess, which is easier with junk food, then you get into trouble. If you're not at a caloric excess, generally you're going to be very healthy and very lean.
I've always found it bothersome when people say you can't eat fruit. Like fruit makes you fat. And I'm like, what? I can't believe it. And it's because there's fructose. And I'm like, you really think that the 300-pound, 400-pound person, it's because they ate too many apples and bananas? Is that really what did it? Or what they ate on top of that? Did they eat the pizza and ice cream? But you get it all the time. It's unbelievable what people say.
Yeah. People want that hack. They want that extra trick. They don't want you to point out the part of their diet that's really causing them to be fat and unhealthy. At the last thing, let's say you're on you're taking a bus somewhere and you sit next to someone who's like really over fat and they start talking to you because you're lean and they ask you like, hey, look, how do I get lean? You seem to know what you're doing. They don't want to hear like, hey, look, you got to move more, get some physical hobbies and put down the junk food for a while or eat less of it and eat more healthy whole foods. They know that shit already. They don't want to hear that shit. They want to hear this.
They want the magic secret.
They want to hack. Yep.
Yeah.
They want to be like, so fructose, right? They're like, yeah, I've read about it. Like it's fucking poison to your body. Evolution didn't design you to eat it. You just eliminate it and you can have all the foods you want fructose free and you'll be fucking bodybuilder tomorrow. And they're like, oh my God, it's just not fucking true. And it sucks, but that's the reality.
And I get asked that question all the time. And will always say like, eat your leaner meats, try to get a lot more fruit and vegetables. Like for me, I'm just a huge advocate to eat more fruit and vegetables because it's going to be lower in calories, going to keep you full. There's fiber and like macronutrients, and so many people neglect it. A lot of bodybuilders, I would give them some of it. I'm not big on chicken, broccoli, and rice, but it's in their meal plan. Chicken, broccoli, and rice, except for they don't eat the broccoli or asparagus or whatever. I'm like, so you're eating chicken and rice, but you're not eating the vegetables that went with it. And they're like, yeah, it's not important. I'm like, it's so important. It's just shocking, but people don't want to eat those vegetables or the fruit. It's just so hard to get people to eat that.
Yeah, it's crazy. People think like fruit magically makes you fatter. And so first of all, in the scientific literature, that's just false. And second of all, there's like some kind of weird bodybuilding lore in which they say like, bam, fructose, you won't be able to lose fat. Like I've gotten my leanest eating like tons of fruit every single day. And like, where are these natural free living human populations that eat a shitload of lean meats, fruits, and veggies, and they're just fat? They don't fucking exist.
Right.
Like, can you imagine someone being like, yeah, man, I fucking had a real binge with fruit. Now I'm over my fucking cat. Like, what?
Yeah, I couldn't stop eating those bananas. Right. 13 bananas in, and I just slipped and I had 30 bananas. It doesn't happen.
No.